I didn't find out my life had been running on a lie until a chicken wing and a quiet question knocked the wind out of me. For sentences into grace, my dad looked up and asked if the money he'd been sending was enough. I said, "What money?" and watched the color drain out his face. That's the moment the floor gave way. I'm Logan, 19, first-year med student in New York by way of Dallas. If you ever tried to memorize the brachial plexus while your stomach argues with a vending machine, you know the vibe. Tuition's covered. Everything else is on me. I stack shifts like Jenga, tutoring on Tuesdays, a bar on weekends, event gigs whenever they text. Rent eats first, then transit, then whatever's left pretend to be food. By October, I was nodding in lectures, blinking through double anatomy labs. Telling myself hustle was a pre-RQ. Meanwhile, my sister, Sky, 21, fashion school in Paris, was posting rooftop parties and designer flourishes like confetti. I muted her stories and pretended it didn't sting. When money got tighter than scrubs after a hot wash, I called home. Dad's a surgeon and lives at the hospital. Mom, Marla, runs everything else, especially the accounts. She sighed, said tuition was already a stretch, that there wasn't any cushion for living expenses. I swallowed the pride and the hunger. Okay then, more shifts, fewer meals. 2 weeks later, the world tilted. Friday rush, the bar humming, citrus in the air, ice clattering like tiny bones. I balanced a tray of cocktails, and the lights tunneled. The last thing I remember is reaching for the rail, like that metal bar could anchor a whole life. I woke up under fluorescent honesty while a resident explained exhaustion and malnutrition, as if they were electives I'd signed up for. I went home with 4 tapes still on my arm and shame stuck in my throat. My boss told me he called an ambulance and my parents. He also told me to take the rest of the month off, which sounded like kindness until I did the math. Kindness doesn't pay rent. I texted a classmate back late that night and told him why I'd ghosted. He showed up anyway with groceries and a pan of spaghetti, the real kind with garlic that announces itself to the hallway. Over dinner he frowned. Your dad's a doctor. There's really no support. I repeated Mom's line about things being tight. He raised an eyebrow. Then how is Sky living like a magazine spread? The pasta turned to paste in my mouth. That question followed me around like a shadow. It sat beside me while I scrolled Sky's feed, Monaco, Milan, a Dior dress caption. Mom always knows exactly what I need. It rode the subway as I counted tips and considered picking up another tutoring client. It curled up in my cheap studio at 3 a.m. when the radiator clicked and my stomach argued with the silence. Finally, I did something we almost never do. I called my sister. She answered on the second ring, breathless. Party noise behind her. Paris looked good on her voice. I asked, lightly as I could, how she was managing costs. Mom sends about $3,000 a month. She said, casual as weather. More if I need something for school. Why? I told her no reason and stared at the ceiling where the paint bubbled like a map I couldn't read. I decided to stop guessing and go home for the holidays, even if only for one night. I bought the cheapest flight and counted the days in instant noodle bricks. The minute Dad opened the door in Dallas, he froze. You've lost weight, he said, not as a compliment. Mom's eyes did that quick scan mothers do when they're inventorying damage. She flinched. Lunch was salad, soup, wings. The food of a family pretending everything's normal. We sat. The house smelled like rosemary and restraint. Dad watched me eat, then put his fork down, concerned stitching his eyebrow. Are you eating properly? No, I said, not really. Cafeteria? He asked. Too expensive. He blinked. Is the money I've been sending enough? What money? I said again, slower this time, like maybe I'd misheard the first time and the second would fix it. His chair scraped tile. He turned to Mom. Something electric moved through the room. Here's what you need to know about my family. Dad heals strangers for a living, then comes home bone tired and soft with us. Mom believes in appearances the way some folks believe in saints. Sky is the sun in Mom's sky. I've been a dependable weather. Dad's face set in a way I'd only ever seen in operating room photos. Marla, he said quietly, have you been transferring Logan's allowance? The word allowance felt ridiculous next to my calloused hands and the 4 bruises on my wrist. Mom folded her napkin, unfolded it, folded it again. "We've had a lot of expenses," she said. "Logan manages." The room went very still. "Marla," Dad said again, softer and somehow more dangerous, "I asked you a yes or no question." She didn't answer. A cold little truth stepped into the space between us and pulled out a chair. My appetite left the table. Dad's surgeon voice came out, low, precise, impossible to talk over. The oven clock ticked between us like a metronome nobody asked for. Somewhere outside, a sprinkler sputtered to life, civilian sounds refusing to match the moment. I could feel my pulse in the bruise where the 4 had been, a dull drum that said keep listening. Whatever came next would redraw the map of our family. That's when everything changed. Mom's fingers stopped moving. Her lips pressed into a line I recognized from my childhood, the one that meant we were about to be told what reality was. She lifted her eyes and said the sentence that detonated the rest of the day. I gave it to Sky. Silence met Mom's sentence like it had been waiting at the door. Sky's name hit the table with the weight of a bill nobody wanted to open. Dad's mouth worked once, twice, like he was choosing between a dozen versions of the same word and rejecting all of them. "How long?" he asked finally. Mom smoothed her napkin again, that choreography of avoidance. "Since August," she said. It made sense. Paris is expensive. She has to look the part. The part? Dad's laugh was soft and awful. The part of what, an heiress? She's in fashion, James. Mom's voice sharpened. Connections matter. Presentation matters. You don't understand that world. And Logan does. He understands starving. His voice wasn't loud, which made it land harder. I sat there like a witness in my own house. It felt indecent to exist in the middle of their marriage like that, but hunger and the 4 tape and the rent due clenched my spine. "How much?" I heard myself ask. Mom's eyes cut to me, surprised I'd entered the conversation. $2,000 a month for you, she said quickly, as if she were reminding us of the plan. That's what your father requested. But Sky's school is abroad. Answer the question, Dad said, not looking away. $3,000 for Sky's living expenses. She swallowed. Sometimes more if there's an event, or if she needs proper clothes. It's competitive. Proper clothes, Dad repeated, like he was trying on a phrase, and found it didn't fit. And Logan? Proper meals? I thought about the hospital, the resident's eyes kind and clinical, the way my boss's voice went tight when he told me he dialed 911. I collapsed at work, I said quietly, from exhaustion and not eating enough. Dad turned to me so fast his chair squealed. I saw the exact second he realized he'd missed it, that I'd been drowning in the shallow end while he was rounding in the deep. You collapsed? He looked at Mom. Did you know? She flinched. They called, she said to the table. I didn't want to worry you. You were in the middle of a case. You didn't want to worry me, he repeated, and it wasn't a question. But you wanted Sky to have a Chanel bag. Don't be dramatic, she snapped, and there it was, the old defense. It was for her birthday. The sentence for her birthday doesn't turn theft into love, he said. Mom bristled. Theft? It's not theft if it's for our daughter. It is when the funds were earmarked for our son. Something in me wanted to defend her, to translate the ferocity I'd always mistaken for love. But I stayed quiet. I was tired of being the interpreter. Dad pushed back from the table. The surgeon was gone. The father had arrived. From now on, he said, I'll handle Logan's transfers myself. Direct deposit. Weekly if I have to. You can't just... Mom started. I can, he said. And I will. Sky's allowance is being reassessed too. Mom's hands flattened, palms white. She will fail without support. Then she can succeed with a budget. He exhaled, and the room temperature changed. I let this dynamic run unchecked because I told myself it was taste and temperament. It's not. It's neglect dressed up as strategy. What do you want me to say, James? That I love them differently? Fine. Logan is like you. He's steady. He'll be fine. Sky is delicate. She's 21. I said, surprising both of us. Delicate doesn't pay rent in Paris either. Mom's gaze snapped to me. The room felt suddenly too bright. You think she has it easy? You think pressure doesn't count because it's not exams? She shook her head. You always had structure. She has to create it. Dad's eyes were on me now, not harsh, exactly, but full of seeing. I'm sorry, he said, and the words were heavy. I thought you were covered. I thought you were getting what I set aside. I thought we were broke. I admitted, or that you were teaching me a lesson. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, something had settled. There's not going to be a lesson at Logan's expense again. We left the table. Mom stayed with the dishes like they might unionize against her. Upstairs, in my old room with the posters my 17-year-old self thought were cool, Dad sat on the edge of the bed the way he used to when I was sick. He studied the mark from 4. He didn't touch it. I'm transferring $5,000 today, he said. Back pay, then $1,000 every month, until we pick a number that reflects reality. You cut hours. You sleep. You study. I nodded. Agreement felt like oxygen. He hesitated, then asked, what has Sky actually told you? I relayed the rooftop, the Dior caption, the Mom always knows exactly what I need. His mouth folded around that sentence like it tasted old. Downstairs, a cabinet door closed too hard. The house made its familiar protest. For a second, I was 8, counting the beats between raised voices. I didn't get involved enough, Dad said softly. I told myself I was providing by working, but money isn't the same thing as attention. We all believe different versions of the same story, I said, and in Mom's version, the hero had a designer bag. He huffed a breath that was almost a laugh and wasn't. I'll call Sky tonight. Her budget changes effective immediately. He paused, choosing careful words. And your mother and I need to talk about boundaries. That night, Sky called me first, angry and breathless. What did you tell Dad? She demanded. I told her the truth, that I'd been working 60 hours on top of school, that I'd passed out a bar, that she'd been getting thousands a month while I rationed ramen. That money isn't for fun, she said, wounded pride leaking through. It's for building a future. Image matters. You don't get it. I get that fainting at work isn't a networking strategy. I wasn't shouting, which somehow made it land sharper. Welcome to a budget. She hung up, then texted 10 minutes later. I didn't know you collapsed. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I put my phone face down and let the quiet pulse. Morning brought the kind of awkward truce only sleep can bake. Dad brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Mom moved like a ghost, touching surfaces, setting and resetting cups without drinking. Finally, she said, I was trying to help Sky. She's not like you. I know, I said. That was the point. I thought you were fine, she said to the air. You always are. I was not fine. I kept my voice level. You just didn't look. She flinched as if the sentence had hands. Dad stood, collected his keys, and turned to me. I'll drive you to the airport, he said. Mom opened her mouth like she might stop him, then closed it. In the car, he told me he'd already set up the transfers. It's temporary, he said, until we figure out what's fair. But I can promise you this much. The floor will hold. I touched the bruise at my elbow and believed him, if only because I needed to. We pulled up to departures. Before I got out, he rested his hand on the steering wheel and said, almost to himself, there's something else I have to check. Something I should have checked years ago. What? I asked. He looked at the windshield, at the scrubbed sky above the lane, and his jaw went clinical again. The trust, he said softly. And there's something else you need to know. He didn't say it to scare me. He said like a diagnosis, plain, unavoidable, and already in motion. 2 hours after I landed in New York, Dad called. He didn't waste time on small talk. I was right, he said. I checked the trust. My throat went tight. The family trust was lore, college savings, a cushion, fairness codified so nobody had to beg for it. What about it? Your mother has been diverting funds, he said, each word measured. Roughly $300,000 over the past few years. Into an account in Sky's name. I sat down on the bed like the room had heaved sideways. The radiator clicked, baffled by December. Can she do that? No, he said. Not legally. I've frozen the account and called the bank. It'll take lawyers to unwind it, but we will. Papers rustled on his end. He was already building a case out of anger and signatures. Does Sky know? I asked. Not yet. He exhaled. She'll know soon enough. By the time he called again that evening, he'd spoken to Mom. I could hear the fatigue in his voice. The kind that comes after you said a truth out loud, and it refuses to make anyone behave better. She insists it was temporary, he said, that she was investing in Sky's future. What about mine? I asked, not for effect, but because the question had become a splinter, I kept tonguing. You're not an investment to me, he said. You're my son. The sentence landed like a plank across a gap. The next week became a montage of adult consequences. A lawyer with the patience of Saint emailed me copies of filings for your awareness. I read every line like it might change something. It all boiled down to this. There are names on documents for a reason. Moving money has consequences, even when you call it love. Sky called the day after Dad told her about the trust. Is it true? She asked without a low. When I said yes, she went quiet in the way you do when the ground recategorizes itself beneath you. I didn't ask for that, she said finally. I didn't know. I believe you, I said, and I did. Wanting things and stealing things are different verbs, even when the outfits look similar. She sniffed. Dad says my allowance is now $1,000 a month. Mine too, I said. Welcome to equal. It won't cover much. It'll cover enough. The rest we earn. She made a small, disbelieving sound. You make it sound noble. It isn't, I said. It's just math. Mom called that night, her voice syrupy with grief and insult. Your father is overreacting, she said. He wants to punish me for caring about your sister's dreams. I collapsed, I said. Dreams don't feed people. You think I don't care about you? Her voice rose. You've always been so independent, Logan. You didn't need me. I needed lunch, I said, and maybe a mother who looked. Silence pooled. Then she pivoted, as she always did, to logistics she could control. I can still send Sky something small, she mused aloud, as if thinking to herself. She has a show coming up. She can't show up looking. Don't, I said. Dad will see it. Her breath hissed through the line. Since when do you and your father make the rules? Since the rules started hurting people, I said, surprising myself with the firmness. My voice shook after I hung up, not from fear, but from the weight of speaking plainly. Dad, and I talked every other day after that. He told me he and Mom were starting counseling. We owe it to the years, he said, and to you both, to see if we can fix what we broke by looking away. What if you can't? I asked. We'll do the next right thing. He paused. I should have done that earlier. In the cracks of crisis, normal life kept insisting on itself. I bought groceries like a person, not a scavenger. I slept through the night and remembered what morning felt like. In lecture, the words stopped scattering like birds and started perching long enough to be memorized. I told my boss I'd keep my weekend shifts and give back the weekdays. He nodded in that relieved way managers do when they weren't sure how to care for you without losing you. Sky started sending me photos I'd never gotten from her before. A hem pin with blue tape instead of gold sparkles. A lunch that looked like groceries rather than a tasting menu. A cheap mirror with a sketch taped to it. Clean lines, thoughtful corners. Constraints are design language, she texted, quoting a professor. Who knew? I sent her a picture of my desk, the way I'd organized flashcards into colors. Cranial nerves in one stack, pharmacology in another. Constraints are study language too. I wrote back. On a Sunday call, Dad said something I wasn't ready for. I'll be moving out for a while, he told me, voice careful, to give your mother space, to give us both clarity. I sat with the sentence the way you hold a hot mug in winter, palms stinging and grateful. Okay, I said. The word tried to be adult and didn't quite get there. He cleared his throat. It's not punitive, he said. It's so the conversations can be honest without the house watching. I get it, I said, and meant it and hated it all at once. The week after he moved, counseling turned into a new kind of chess. Dad would share one therapist sentence at a time, not as gossip, but as calibration. She says she doesn't see the favoritism, he reported one night. She says she saw a need. What did you say? I asked. That need doesn't excuse harm. In my apartment, I practiced saying that sentence out loud. It tasted like medicine, bitter, necessary. A month in, Dad's voice changed. It had an edge, a surgical instrument laid on a tray. I'm hoping counseling works, he said, but I need you to hear me. If she keeps moving money, I'll file for divorce. There was the word we never said in our house, the one that splits family photos into before and after. He didn't throw it like a threat. He set it down like a boundary. I stood at my window and watched the city hold its breath in winter. Do you think she'll stop? I asked. I don't know, he said, but I'm done asking in ways that sound like permission. He was quiet a moment, then added, if it comes to that, it's not because you told the truth. It's because the truth was there the whole time. His certainty steadied a piece of me I hadn't realized was wobbling. I slept, and this time the radiator's click sounded like a lullaby instead of metronome for panic. By then, the bank had confirmed the freeze in writing. The letter was sterile. We have restricted disbursements pending resolution. It read like a door quietly closing. I forwarded it to Dad and watched the cursor blink in a room that finally felt mine. Sky and I FaceTimed one rainy Thursday. She propped her phone against pattern books. I balanced mine on a box of oatmeal. Do you hate me? She blurted. No, I said. I just need us to stop living in two different realities. She chewed her lip. I'm unused to limits, she said. Same, I said. She exhaled. I got a part-time job at a boutique. They pay in euros, not compliments. That's big, I said. Eat, sleep, pretend you're not special. Meanwhile, school softened. With bills not screaming, anatomy finally stayed where I put it. My boss kept me on weekends. My friend dragged me to the gym. Food tasted like food again. One evening, Dad said he'd taken an apartment near the hospital. It's ugly, he said, but the water pressure is great. We laughed, startled by how normal it sounded to be honest about a temporary life. We were, all of us, learning new languages. Apology, boundary, equal. Some days we mangled the grammar. Some days it sang. 2 days later, the call came that made all those conversations feel like rehearsals. Logan, Dad said, we need to talk about what happens next. When Dad said, what happens next, he meant choices that don't look like choices when you're on the inside of them. He meant budgets that match reality, boundaries with teeth, and truth that doesn't ask permission. The next month, money arrived the way he promised, clean, direct, on Fridays. The first transfer hit, and I went to the grocery store like a pilgrim. I bought leafy greens that didn't come shrink-wrapped, chicken that wasn't a bargain bin afterthought, a bag of oranges that made my apartment smell like a plan. I texted him a photo of my counter. With my brain no longer mortgaging itself to cover rent, I cut shifts. The bar became weekends only. Tutoring stayed because watching someone's eyes go, oh, is a high I'll never outgrow. I slept, I studied, the word stayed. Anatomy peeled itself off my mental whiteboard and stuck where it should. Sky kept texting strange, wonderful, ordinary things. A receipt for used boots, a lunch he made that looked like food, not a museum, a sketch done on butcher paper because sketchbooks cost more. Constraints are annoying, she wrote, but they're making my lines cleaner. She attached a photo of a dress in muslin that looked like it had something honest to say. Our calls found a rhythm that didn't require a referee. We compared schedules the way kids compare scars. She complained about a professor who loved drama more than draping. I complained about an attending who loved questions more than oxygen. Mom hovered at the edges, narrating injury. Your father is punishing me, she'd say. He's making me look like a villain. I kept my replies short, not to be cruel, but because anything longer turned into the same argument in different clothes. Then, quietly, she tested the fence. Dad called, and his voice had the calm I've learned to hear as Fury's older brother. She tried to send Sky an extra $500, he said. Labeled it groceries. Did Sky accept it? I asked, heart-banging. She texted me first. He said she returned it. The therapist's office became a courtroom without a bench. I'm the only one who believes in Sky, she said. Without me, she's nothing. Dad told me later that the counselor didn't blink. She believes in herself, the therapist said. That's the work you have to do now. A week later, Mom sent another transfer. This time she chopped it into 3 small amounts and called it incidental. Dad's bank alerts didn't care about adjectives. He screenshotted, forwarded, sighed. I can't make her stop wanting what she wants, he said, but I can stop the money. And so he did the thing he'd promised if lines were crossed. He filed. I found out on a Tuesday between a lab quiz and a sandwich that didn't come from a vending machine. I filed for divorce today, he said, and even though I knew it might be coming, the sentence still slid under my ribs. The papers moved on their quiet conveyor belt. Mom alternated between rage and bargaining. I gave my life to this family, she said to me one night, and this is my reward? You gave more to one person than the other, I said, keeping my voice gentle because I have to live with it. The reward is the truth, catching up. Court dates appeared on calendars. I learned more about family law than I'd planned this semester. Dad's lawyer gathered the receipts, the withheld transfers, the diverted trust funds, the secret drips of incidentals. Mom's lawyer tried to call it a misunderstanding. Intent doesn't move money, the judge said at a preliminary hearing. I wasn't in the room, but Dad relayed the line with grim admiration. In the middle of all that, life refused to be sidelined. My friend got me into a pickup basketball game where my lungs remembered they were not just for sighing. Sky's boutique moved to the front on Saturdays. She started recognizing regulars and learning who actually buys clothes and who just takes pictures. I don't know if Mom saw any of that. She sent longer and longer texts about betrayal. Sky, for her part, started using full sentences with Mom, where once she'd use emojis. I'm okay, she'd write. I don't need extras. Please stop. On a cold morning that made the city's breath visible, Dad flew in for a hearing. He let me sit on the back bench, quiet as a coat. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, and then bigger when she saw me and straightened. The judge, a woman with eyebrows like punctuation, listened to both lawyers as if she were editing a story that had gone on too long. When Dad's attorney presented the bank records, something in the room dropped a gear. The judge didn't issue final orders that day, but her tone had gravity. Fiduciary duty, she said to Mom's lawyer, is not a mood. On the way out, Dad asked if I wanted coffee. We walked 3 blocks without speaking, and then both started talking at the same time about nothing. That night, Sky FaceTimed me from a tiny kitchen where a pot of something was bravely boiling. Heard about court, she said. You okay? I will be, I said. Me too, she said, stirring. I'm not buying anything for a while that I can't carry up 5 flights. Fashion rule of thumb, I said. If you can't lift it, it's probably not your size. She laughed. The divorce kept moving through its slow choreography. Discovery, declarations, dates. Mom texted me late one night. I never meant to hurt you. The draft orders were blunt in a way that felt merciful. The trust had to be made whole. Asset split favored the party who hadn't moved the money. Support would sunset. Any future transfers to either child would require signatures from both parents or the court. Reading it felt like standing in a room where someone finally turned the lights on. No one looked better. At least we could see. The last hearing was scheduled for the following week. You don't have to come, Dad said. I told him I wanted to. Okay, he said. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow's just a pre-conference. We were all getting ready. What happened next would redraw us again. The final hearing wasn't dramatic so much as deliberate. The judge took the bench with a stack of paper and the same eyebrows, and she read through the life we'd made into ledgers. She didn't scold. She didn't coo. She signed. When it was over, the room exhaled. The order restored the trust, apportioned assets, and mapped out a future in clean black lines. It didn't say anyone was good or bad. It said what would happen from now on. Sometimes that's the closest thing to justice a family can manage. Outside, Dad and I stood on the courthouse steps, holding coffee cups we didn't remember buying. "You okay?" he asked. I said yes, and meant in the way of someone who knows the work isn't done, but the ground has stopped moving. He looked 10 years older and 5 years lighter. "I'm sorry," he said again, "for not knowing what I should have known." I told him the truth. That sorry is a start, that he'd turned it into verbs. Life didn't snap back. It stretched forward. Dad settled into the apartment with the good water pressure and a kitchen table that wobbled until he fixed it, because that's who he is. He started calling me on Sunday evenings, short check-ins that somehow didn't feel like checklists. Sky kept working the boutique and showing up to class. She started bringing a tiny notebook everywhere and sketching people on the subway who weren't dressed like anyone famous. Her professor told her the clothes were getting quieter and truer. She sent me a photo of her first real sale, a simple black dress in an unglamorous garment bag, carried out of the shop by a teacher who said she needed something that made her feel capable. "She picked mine," Sky texted. I could hear the astonishment through the phone. We talked about Mom carefully. The way you talk around a sleeping animal, you don't want to startle. Sky set boundaries with a politeness that had backbone. "I can't take money," she texted. "I'm okay." Sometimes Mom responded with silence, sometimes with paragraphs. Other times she called me and asked after my classes in an upbeat tone that sounded like a commercial for a family we didn't have anymore. Work and school gave me a new balance I didn't know to want. I joined the Pre-Med Association and found out my brain still liked teams. I learned a lot about my limits, how far I could go on a day's focus, when to eat before I could feel my hands shake. My grades stopped needing rescue missions and began rescuing themselves. The future stopped being a cliff I was sprinting toward and started being a road with signs. Sky texted a photo of her fingers pricked by pins and laughed at learning taxes blood either way. I sent back a selfie in scrubs with raccoon eyes and wrote, "Same job, different fabric." Dad started ending calls with, "Go eat," like it was a blessing. I actually listened. And Mom, Marla, had to learn a new map from scratch. The settlement and the move to a small condo carved out of humility she'd always outsourced. She took a part-time job at a department store. She hated it, then got good at it. She called some nights and cried quietly because a customer had been rude, then told me a funny story about a teenager who tried on prom dresses and forgot she was supposed to be aloof. "Work is work," she said, like she was discovering a planet. I told her I was proud of her for showing up. Months passed like a book you keep wanting to read slower. Dad didn't date, and then he did. Her name was Catherine, a pediatric nurse who laughed like a door opening. He told me about her in the halting way of a man trying not to jinx something good. "She's kind," he said. "She listens." He sounded like a person remembering how. The first time I met her, she knew the names of my finals. She asked about Sky's collection like it was a real thing in the world, and not a dream we were all pretending wasn't fragile. Sky texted that night, "How is she?" I told her Catherine was not a replacement part. She was a separate machine. Sky wrote back, "That sound healthy?" I sent a shrug emoji and a photo of Dad smiling in a way I hadn't seen since I was 10. I wish I could tell you Mom pivoted gracefully into this new era. She didn't. She tried on understanding like a dress that didn't zip, then took it off and put it on again. Therapy helped her find origin stories. The way her own mother had adored a younger sibling, and how she'd vowed to create a world where someone, Sky, felt chosen. The problem with choosing is that it makes unchoosing out of everyone else. She cried about that for the first time and didn't call it someone else's fault. She apologized to me one Tuesday. Not the wallpaper apology of years past, but small, warm sentence that fit in one breath. "I'm sorry I didn't see you," she said. "I'm trying to now." We were on the phone. "Thank you," I said. It didn't fix everything. It did not erase the 4 tape, but it put a stitch where an open edge had been. A year after the courthouse, I was near the top of my class and learning how to speak inside a hospital without sounding like a question mark. Dad was being courted by a different department and said no because he liked sleeping and seeing people he loved. Sky had a tiny show at a youth center, not Paris Fashion Week, and she invited me to watch on a glitchy live stream. Her models were students who walked like they didn't know they were allowed to be beautiful yet. They did anyway. After the show, Sky turned her phone so I could see the messy back room. Thread, tape, joy. Constraints, she said, grinning. My muse. Eat, I said, then sleep. Yes, doctor, she said, rolling her eyes in a way that somehow sounded like gratitude. Dad proposed to Catherine in the least cinematic way possible. In a park, on a bench, with a ring that looked like it had always been meant for her hand. He called me after and said, she said yes, and then didn't speak for a full minute because both of us were tearing up and pretending not to. I'm happy, he added, like he needed my permission to be. You get to be, I said. You earned this. The plan was simple. Christmas at Dad and Catherine's place. Sky would fly in for 3 days between shifts. Mom, yes, would come for dinner. We were going to make something that looked like a family out of people who'd finally stopped pretending. The week before, I flew home for a quick visit. Dallas felt different, like it had learned to share its air. Mom met me for coffee. She wore a simple sweater and the shoes of someone who stand a lot. She didn't mention Paris or parties. She asked for my order and paid. I'm proud of you, she said, the words careful, like a plate set down gently. I believed her. That didn't used to happen. On the flight back, I stared at the seatback safety card and thought about how the instructions sort you. Put on your own mask first, then help the person next to you. I'd been gasping for so long, I'd forgotten I was allowed to breathe. Finals ended, and I packed a duffel with gifts that felt like the right scale. A book for Catherine about kids and medicine. A scarf Sky could actually afford to wear. A frame for Mom with a blank card inside. For a photo we take this year, I planned to write. The morning of Christmas Eve, Dad texted. Airport pickup? I sent a thumbs up and a joke about wearing a chauffeur's cap. We were ready for dinner. For a table that wouldn't lie. For toast that didn't require translation. We were ready for the awkward and the honest to sit next to each other like relatives who'd finally made peace. And then the doorbell rang early. It was Mom at the door, holding a pie like a passport and wearing the careful smile people put on when they don't know if they're welcome. Catherine beat Dad to the handle. Hi, Marla, she said, warm enough to be real and not so warm to pretend that the past hadn't happened. Come in. Sky arrived an hour later, hair wind-frizzed, suitcase scuffed, eyes bright the way hard work makes them. She hugged Dad, then Catherine, then me, then turned to Mom and paused long enough for choice to be visible. They hugged, small and human. Dinner smelled like roasted rosemary and cautious optimism. We set the table together. Without choreography, Dad poured sparkling water like it was champagne. Catherine slid lasagna out of the oven with the confidence of someone who has lifted much heavier things. Mom's pie waited at the edge like it needed clearance. We sat. No one made a speech. We talked about airports and weather, then about nothing, then about something. Sky told a story about a customer who'd tried on a coat and become a different animal in the mirror. I told one about an attending who quizzed me so hard I accidentally learned things. Dad explained the joke of hospital coffee. Catherine explained how to make toddlers open their mouths at checkups. Mom smiled in the right places and didn't reach for her purse. Halfway through, Mom put down her fork. I have something to say, she said, and my spine did what spines do when old habits enter a room. But her voice didn't surge. It steadied. I can't take back what I did. I thought I was protecting Sky. I was protecting a story I wrote about myself. I'm sorry. She glanced at Dad. For lying. She looked at me. For not seeing you. She looked at Sky. For making you small by calling you special. The room held very still. Sky reached for water, drank, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand like a kid, then nodded once. Okay, she said. Thanks. Dad nodded too. Eyes went in a way he would deny. Catherine looked at everyone like a nurse does when the room changes, and no one has named it yet. I didn't say it's fine, because it wasn't. I said, thank you for saying it, because that was the true thing I could carry. Then I took another bite of lasagna, and the clatter of forks began again, and the world didn't end. After dinner, we did the most ordinary thing. We washed dishes. Sky and I traded the soapy side and the drying side, a choreography we never got to practice as kids. Mom hovered with a towel like she was waiting for permission. Grab the glasses. Sky said, friendly but not servile. Mom did. Later, Dad brought out boxes of ornaments from a closet that didn't know our stories, and we dressed a tree that had no idea whose house it was. Catherine hung a tiny stethoscope charm a nurse friend had given her. Sky placed a paper dress she cut out a grocery bag. I looped a red ribbon from a med school holiday swap. Mom found a dented silver star and stood there with it in her hand until Dad said, "Go on." She reached up and set it on the top, her face tilted toward the light. Sky and I walked Mom to her car. The air had that thin winter bite. Our breaths made 3 small clouds. She unlocked the door, then didn't get in. "I'm in therapy," she blurted, then shrugged. "I hate it. It's helping." "I'm glad," I said. She nodded. "I don't know who I am if I'm not giving Sky more." "Maybe you're the mom who gives us both the same thing." Sky said softly, "Attention counts." Mom laughed a little, surprised by the idea. "Okay," she said. "I can practice." She looked at me. "Do you need anything?" The old version of that sentence was a trap. This one felt like a hand extended. I told her I was good. "Then just let me know," she said, as if she were learning a new instrument. Back inside, Dad and Catherine were debating whether the star leaned or had character. The room smelled like cinnamon and a second chance. We sat with mugs of tea and a quiet that felt earned. Dad reached into a bag and pulled out a small envelope. "One more thing," he said, handing it to me. Inside was a photo, me at 8 in a science fair t-shirt, grinning beside a model lung I'd made out of soda bottles and red tubing. On the back, in Dad's block letters, he'd written, "Saw you then. See you now." He didn't look at me while I read it. He didn't need to. Sky unzipped a garment bag and showed us 2 pieces from her small collection. "Clean lines, steady seams, pockets. For carrying your own keys," she said, and we laughed because it was simple and exactly right. Catherine asked if she could try on the jacket. Sky said yes like it was the easiest decision in the world. We opened presents. Nothing extravagant. Socks, books, a candle that smelled like Pinehead Manors. Mom gave me a card with a photo from coffee tucked inside. On the back she'd written, "For a frame we fill later." I bought the frame for her. The symmetry made my chest ache in a good way. Before bed, I stepped outside alone. The neighborhood was quiet in that December way. Families don't heal like bones. They heal like habits, over and over until new ones hold. In the morning, we made waffles because pancakes felt too nostalgic. Mom arrived a little late and didn't apologize for the pie this time because there was no need. Sky and I slid into the kind of banner siblings use when they're trying on peace. Dad moved around the kitchen like a man who had chosen his life on purpose. Catherine caught my eye and did the tiniest nod, a signal that nurses and people with siblings recognize. It was not perfect. There were pauses where old ghosts stretched their legs. But it was honest. It was ours. And in that small newness, I felt something loosen that had been clenched for years, some muscle that had held us in place finally deciding to let go. I don't pretend the withheld money vanished. I think about it enough to keep gratitude from tipping into denial. I think about the transfers that did arrive, groceries, sleep, and about how limits can save us from ourselves. That's the story, not the Instagram version. The lived-in one where people change slowly and paperwork helps and therapy helps and meals help and apologies help and none of it erases anything. It just builds something real where the pretense used to be. I'm still Logan. I'm still a medical student with a bike that needs a new chain. I'm also a son in a family that is learning to see without squinting. We cleared the table, set the mugs in the sink, and stood a minute longer than we needed to, the way people do when they understand that ordinary is the miracle. If this felt like closure, it is only because we earned it the long way. As for you listening, if you made it here, thank you. We're okay. We're better than that. We're honest. And since we finally got to this part, let me ask you something that lives at the heart of what happened and what we chose. If you were me, standing between a mother who siphoned funds in the name of love and a father trying to repair the damage? Would you have cut my mom off completely to protect your sanity, or kept a cautious relationship while insisting on hard boundaries and legal safeguards? Tell me in the comments. And if this story kept you company, tap like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for being here with me while we figured it out.